Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. Today what I decided to do was to bring in one of my handmade sketchbooks. I mentioned these a while back. I created them in my year-long art program, the Creative Blend art program. And today I'm going to talk you through how I use these books to develop my abstract work and to help me overcome overthinking. So I hope you enjoy this insight into my process. So with this spread, I started with one of my go-tos, which is just to pick up a paint pen and start getting some marks down. And this is all about building up the surface quality of the page and getting some interesting marks into the background. So I've also added in some graphite pencil, and I'm holding the pencil really loosely. I'm also adding in some of those Lyra pastels just to get a nice juxtaposition of marks. And once I started adding in the darker pink, I felt like it started to pop a bit more because I'd brought in that contrasting colour and I'd also added in a larger shape. And that's something that I find quite often will help with an abstract design. And then to finish off, I went in with something that would add a focal area and high contrast. So I'm using some white little dashes, and these dashes remind me of little stitches. So this page has a really nice free-flowing feel to it. It feels a little bit like a windswept day or a feeling of being windswept. So let's move on to the next one. This one here, I went through some stages with it. I started off by adding in some more acrylic paint, just using a nice big sweeping shape, continuing along with the theme of quite curved marks. I then grabbed the Lyra pastel and dragged it through the wet paint, which is always something that I love to do. I have found that these Lyra pastels, they're not as pigmented or juicy as the Neocolor 2 water-soluble crayons that I normally use, and they don't sit on mixed media layers quite as well. So I was having a little bit of trouble with getting the marks to pop. So I've got these circular paint lines. I've got this striking white line, which was done with masking fluid. I've got these pastel pink lines. And I also added in this lovely light sweep of Payne's grey colour at the bottom, which I really like. It was interesting to bring the ink over in a sheer layer and see how the spray paint that I had applied in a previous session came through and resisted the ink, and it's actually a really pretty dappled effect. There was an area here where I wrestled with different kinds of marks. Then I decided to pick up some acrylic ink in the Payne's grey. I love using Payne's grey acrylic ink. There's just something about it. And I was using the end of a brush and concentrating on getting thick and thin lines. And this is a nice way to get variety into a page, and it's a nice contrast against some of the other styles of line work that are in here. I added in some more scribbles, didn't like that, covered it up. And then I went in with acrylic paint to block out the area. But the acrylic paint that I was using is actually very transparent. It wasn't giving me a lot of opacity, but it did provide a little bit of breathing room, which I needed. But I think this is an area that I probably will come over again and carve out a little bit more space in it. But I do love the textures. You know what? I've just said that and I've realised that my goal with this sketchbook is not to create finished paintings. You can see how my brain just goes to wanting to resolve this, whereas what I'm hoping for is to just look at this as it is and identify the areas that I like and then bring that into another painting and not necessarily need to keep fiddling with this one. So that's just a little note for myself because I often do go into that kind of headspace. So this spread has a floral feel. Spring is on the way, and I decided to bring in some more springy colours. So I came in with the lavender Watercolor by Daniel Smith. This is just copy paper, so I'm not working on watercolor paper. So the results are very different to what I would get in a painting. And it's fun to challenge myself to work with these materials that aren't as premium as what I usually work with. And the Daniel Smith paint is a premium product, but the paper and some of the pastels aren't. But interestingly, it does create a really nice texture just on normal copy paper. So I then came in with some pastel work, and I pretty much straight away knew that I would want to add some quite strong design element onto the black area. So I'm using a white paint pen to create a quick design. With this sketchbook, I was working really fast and just getting the rough shape down. And it does provide a really lovely contrast against that dark background. And I continued to add other flower-inspired shapes using acrylic paint and pastels, but I just wanted to keep it loose. That was the goal here, keep it nice and loose. So with this spread, it was back to my beloved Payne's Grey ink, and I decided to go in with some repetitive mark making and just put down a simple pattern using round brush strokes. And then I thought, what can I do that's a little bit different here, something that I don't normally use? So I brought in the gold ink. So this is the Winsor & Newton drawing ink in gold, and it dries super lovely. Like, I love the way it looks against the craft paper. The gold and that tan kind of background is super lovely. In relation to the other elements, I picked up on the circular rounded shapes and replicated that in a number of different ways. So I have little black dots. So I'm playing with scale. I'm going in with some little marks. I've got some bigger marks. And then I decide to try and come in with some even bigger shapes. So I'm using a water-soluble black pencil to create a large outline. I've also used a Lyra pastel in the pink, and I've come in with that acrylic paint as well. So it's a lot of overlapping circles in this particular design. For me, the highlight of this spread was discovering the beauty in the gold paint once it dried, because it's probably a difficult thing to pick up on camera, but it just has this really lovely sheerness to it and lots of gorgeous texture. So now we'll move on to my final page that I did, and this is my favourite, I think. Sometimes it takes a while to warm up when you are working like this. That's something I do find, is that you start to figure out what you're enjoying in the process as you are working. And I just kept on trying different things and pushing through. And what I was hoping for was to come up with something that was interesting and different. And this is the spread that I feel achieved that the most. So this is a geometric style spread. And when I came into this page, I had that idea in my mind. So I came into it with the concept of exploring geometric shapes, and in particular triangles. And I started off by drawing loose triangles with a ruler, quite scruffy, but using a ruler to get nice straight edges. And then I used a Posca paint pen to colour in some areas to make some of the triangles stand out more. And then I did this little design up the top here. And I wanted to make sure that these triangles were quite wonky and a little softer and warmer, because I knew that I was using a lot of angles. So I wanted it to have that sort of not quite as sharp look to it. And then to finish off, I added in this blue soft pastel design through the center to create a focal area. And I'm using the Prisma NuPastels. They are really nice and vibrant. I also used a little bit of white paint pen. I didn't mention it before, but just down here, I've got that line. It almost looks like a road. I'm not sure what's coming through for me with this spread, But this part definitely looks like a road and something to do with traffic and urban structures and environments. Interesting. It's interesting what comes through when you allow yourself to be super abstract. So I wasn't really trying to abstract anything in particular. I was focusing on not thinking and just seeing what came through when I allowed my innate expression to surface. It's interesting what marks are your go-tos and what kind of colours you choose and the things that come up when you truly just let yourself go and let yourself go with the flow. So I hope you've enjoyed seeing a little bit of an insight into how I approach my abstract sketchbooks. I purposely stayed away from botanicals in this sketchbook. I wanted to try and keep it a little bit more to do with shape and line and not bring in anything recognizable. I may end up doing another one. I have another little handmade sketchbook, and I think I might focus more on nature-inspired imagery in that one. So let me know if you'd like to see that one. And if you are interested in my approach to mixed media and also sketchbooks, I am putting together a free course. So that will be coming out in a couple of weeks. So to make sure that you hear about that, the best thing to do is get on my newsletter list, which is laurahornart.com/newsletter, because that will be a free course that will be hosted on the course platform that I use. So it's not going to be on YouTube. So you do need to make sure that you hear about that through my newsletter or my social media channels. That free course will be a taster for my Modern Mixed Media course, which is coming out at the end of September for registration. So I wanted to give you a little bit more of a feel for that course and share with you some step-by-step lessons. So keep an eye out for that. I'm in the process of putting it together. I haven't released a new free course for a while, so I'm quite excited to share some new techniques and ideas with you. So let me know in the comments if you've enjoyed this video, if you'd like to see more of my sketchbook process. I love hearing from you and I love getting ideas as well for my own sketchbook processes.